Welcome to the first of 2 episodes on revision with Sokina Mohamed and Zahraa Al-Mahdawy. What's particularly valuable about today's discussion is that you're both actually former students here, so you'll be able to share the student perspective of what revision was actually like in practice. So hopefully we can get some insight into the common pitfalls around revision and how we might combat them. So, what do you think are the biggest misconceptions that students hold around revision?
So initially, this is just for human beings in general, not just students, but we always want to start off with what feels familiar and easy. For students in particular, when they are studying, they always want to go for the thing that they understand, sort of to just boost their ego a little bit, or if it's just they're afraid of actually just tackling things that they've never seen before, that they know it's challenging. And part of this is because of social media, because of AI, because of all of these things that we have easy access to, it's contributed to this concept of instant gratification, where we are just so used to receiving answers in seconds. We are receiving like deliveries the next day, receiving anything very quickly, that we've gotten used to the fact that everything that we want just comes easy. And things like revision, things like, I don't know, if you want to go to the gym and lose some weight, anything that requires some delayed gratification almost feels boring to us now, that it's actually quite hard to study and put in that effort to do the right thing because of what has become our norm, which is instant gratification.
Yeah, definitely. And revision's hard, isn't it? So we want to build a culture that normalizes that struggle. I think it's easy for students when they're doing something difficult to interpret that as failure when actually that's a sign that it's working and that memory is being strengthened. It's I think students can often equate what feels like fluency with learning. So because it feels smooth, they think they're learning, but they're not necessarily. I guess that's why things like retrieval practice in lessons is so important, because the more effortful that practice is, the more sort of durable that learning becomes. So perhaps we need to thoroughly embed low stakes quizzing, mini whiteboard retrieval, knowledge dumps into lessons so that we start to shift that culture around struggle and we normalise that desirable difficulty.
Yeah, I completely agree. I also wanted to add that we tend to emphasize revision a lot for year 11s or whenever we have an assessment coming up. And for especially for year 11s, it feels like their revision starts way too late. And I remember specifically as a student when I was studying for my GCSEs, I actually found myself just teaching myself what I've learnt in lesson. Part of that is me maybe not focusing in lesson, or just not having that practice done outside of school. So, kind of touching on what's been said before about doing those boring, like repeated tasks of practicing questions, and just doing those like really like boring things to help me be able to revise. And so, emphasizing revision throughout the year or even years means that when it comes to revising, you're actually just revisiting the content and reminding yourself rather than relearning.
Yeah, definitely. That's so true. If we only revisit content at the end of a course, then that forgetting of it is inevitable. And I guess that's where spacing as teachers really matters. So having those weekly review questions or interleaving old topics, so that revision becomes part of learning and part of our actual lesson routine rather than this separate event that takes place just before an exam. It's interesting because I think there's a consistent theme coming through, which is around the importance of building revision into our everyday teaching and making it a really normal part of both teacher and student practice. If you can give staff one takeaway from today's conversation, what would it be?
So I love this question because I'm so happy to share that I've done something with my year nines that I've actually seen that has been working. This is something that I did when I was in year 11 as well, that I had wished that I had more time to space it out. So what I've done with my year nines is I would assign them homework based on the lesson, but that would be maths watch homework, which should take about about 20 to 25 minutes that they do. But more importantly, I put more emphasis on these specific exam style questions that I set that actually have nothing to do with what I've taught. So they are completely different. And I've started with grade 1 questions, which are like the easiest maths questions you can get. And I've gone through each topic week by week. And essentially, I get them to do the questions. They come in the week after. I check to see if they've done it, but we don't mark it. We don't do anything about it in lesson. When they go home and I set the new homework, I also upload the answers to the previous week. And so I'm checking to see if, one, they are doing the homework, and two, if they are assessing it themselves through exam style questions. So they are exposed to the sort of questions that I would expect them to be used to by the time they get to year 11. And I am starting from grade 1. So if there's anything that I've sort of expected them to know because they're at year 9 now that they still don't know, they have that opportunity now to go and fix it themselves. And if they don't, then it's just practice and revision for them. In that case, by the time it's year 11, they already have that skill of just going home, doing practice questions, marking it themselves, and starting again and again. So it kind of builds up on the point that Zahraa was saying, that we don't actually start early. We always teach them exam style revision in year 11, but I've started from year 9 and it seems to be working really well, even for their like end of topic exams or end of year exams.
Yeah, that's really nice actually, because I guess because it's homework, you're scaffolding that revision and independent,
yeah.
like,
and they
studying.
see it as homework. They don't actually see it as revision. But when year 11 comes around, I'm like, hey, you guys have actually been studying. You've figured out all these topics on your own. I never taught you this. And they're like, oh, okay, then I can just keep doing it by myself.
Yeah, that's really nice. Yeah, it sounds great. Thank you both for joining today. In part 2, we'll move on to another idea around revision, what it means to truly know the content. I look forward to speaking to you both then.